Mine's medium sized. You can talk to ghosts.
Good morning, good evening and good afternoon, and welcome back to another Lost the Plot video. This is our follow-up from the Batman video. This is our next one, which is going to be a little bit longer. So we are going to split this up into two parts because we still want to have those longer discussion videos. So do expect it to be split into two parts. The releases for this will be the Monday and then the Wednesday for part 2. So today's video is about trilogies, but I will get onto that shortly after we start with how we always start, with James's unpopular opinion.
Right, you're probably going to hate me. I don't know if you guys have seen it. Rick and Morty's just like okay. It's just never done anything for me in that sense of where it's made me go, I need to keep watching this. I've seen bits of the old episode and that, started to try and get into it, and then fell off the wagon somewhere and just went, so?
Hold it.
And Grace, I know you're watching, I'm sorry. Alright? That's just how it is for me, alright?
I'm with Matt on that. I think I agree.
I kind of agree, yeah.
Oh my god.
I think there's a lot.
I know you might.
A couple of episodes and I've gone, this is not.
It falls off a little
Good.
bit. I feel like the first two are the best 2 seasons.
Right.
And then, yeah, there's
There's
just
some
some that
that
are
I've
just
seen,
boring.
yeah.
There's some that are amazing. There's like 1 or 2 episodes that
I'm not doubting
I highly
this.
regard.
Yeah.
But there's some that are a bit boring.
I do just feel it's horrendously overrated.
I've not watched it properly enough to comment on anything, but the couple I've watched, I've just sat there and gone, this is just.
Well, that says it all for me. The fact that it doesn't pull me in.
No,
And make
yeah.
me want especially a show like that. I should be all over that.
But suppose if you don't watch a show from the beginning, sometimes you're not going to be as invested.
Yeah. Well,
Because I
I think we
remember-
just watched it at uni once, didn't we? Just
as
started
and
it
when someone's
because it's
watching
just
it.
on.
Oh, you didn't go for it in order?
First few, I've watched the first few, but that's what I mean. And then it
I
was
think
like
it's
I went home then after that, and I was like, oh, I'm not that.
First and second, probably.
Yeah. So yeah, that's that. It's alright.
Yeah. So what? Not as bad.
Yeah.
I've not wanted to throttle you after that one.
I was going to say, it's been alright in the room. I'm not sure what's going to get on the other side of that screen.
I know there are people that are going to be annoyed at that.
So again, apologies, Grace, because I know.
No, don't apologise, it's your opinion.
Yeah, I know, but still.
Right, as I said, today's video is going to be about trilogies, and the way it's going to play out is that we are going to talk about our favourite trilogies in detail and have a discussion about them, because I'm pretty confident we've all watched some sort of our films or films from our trilogies. Probably not in great depth, but we can still have that discussion. And the second part will take up from Tom introducing his mystery trilogy, because we have no idea what he's going to bring to the table, and we're going to talk a little bit about highest grossing films and other honourable mentions as well. To be honest, you could probably look at the shot and see various different props that may give some things away. Anyone spotted the sword behind Matthew's head? Yeah? What's that for? Yeah, see, look. So...
Intrigued now, aren't you?
Yeah, look, drawing you in. So, let's start with Matt, actually, since I've just pointed out that above your bonds. Trilogy, what's your favourite?
Well, if you've seen the intro video, then you'll know. Because it's
Oh, you're about 6
I've got the Bible on you.
Just get the pipe about.
Oh shit, that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad you realised what I was talking about.
Sorry, Matt, you carry on.
This is the Lord of the Rings. It's my favourite trilogy, my favourite film. I consider it all as just one film because it's a coherent story. Some trilogies have 3 different stories completely, but follow the same characters, whereas this one follows the same story throughout.
That is a very good point, actually. You could watch them consistently and it would follow on brilliantly.
Yeah.
That's a great point, yeah.
I could go on for ages about what my favourite parts of the trilogy are. I don't know how you want me to do it.
Go on. What's that like 9 hours worth to go through there? Set your pick, mate. Go for it.
It's got high stakes. It's got emotional journeys. It's got amazing soundtracks. It's got amazing action sequences. It's got
The score.
visuals. Go on.
As you said, the score the score's so important to a film, and I feel like Lord of the Rings' score is brilliant throughout all three. Like there's never a moment where the score doesn't add to the scene or create tension, or it's brilliant. I love it. Even little stupid bits like where Frodo's in the bed at the end and he's got the happy music. It's all in slow motion. All the way. That just so heartwarming. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, everything going back to that film, I could watch it like without getting bored on repeat.
Jesus,
So
that's a
many
brave
times.
statement.
I know they're long films as well. But
Comment if you'd like Matt to watch it for the rest of his life without moving.
We'll live stream it. Just slowly watching with us.
Matt Decay.
I made a mistake.
That went a bit dark. Sorry.
I will say that I've never watched the theatrical versions of these films. I've only ever watched the extended versions, and they're obviously a lot longer. I think they're like 4 hours each time.
Yeah.
The extended ones.
Yeah.
And I don't know what scenes are knocked out for the theatrical versions and what that would take away from the story.
I remember watching it with you, the theatrical ones, because you watched the first one first, and I went, "Oh, that's not in that," and talking about sort of what other scenes are involved in it, because there were things you talked about that I'd never ever seen before.
Yeah, and
So-
there's a lot of scenes taken out.
Yeah.
But I don't know how. Yeah, so I don't know how much that, if you've only seen the theatrical versions or whatever, and whether that's not enough for you or whether it takes some away and adds some is important. I don't know.
I was going to ask a question. Would you recommend watching the extended versions because it adds so much more to the story, but you've never watched?
Yeah,
theatrical?
because after watching the extended editions and they say how much they take out, I'm sitting there thinking how can they take out this much time's worth of content?
I don't want to miss this.
Because when you I can see like a scene being taken out, but when they're like saying 10 or 20 scenes were taken out, I'm thinking how is it still a coherent emotional story when you've taken this many important scenes out? But
To be fair, now you've mentioned that, when you watch the theatrical cuts, the director's cuts, you don't. There's some instances where things don't make sense or it's quite jumpy. I think Aragon leading the Army of the Dead, that part where they turn up on the boat, it goes from him talking to him and then nothing ever happened after that, and then they just turn up. But I think you said there's quite a lot that goes on before that to arrive on the boat and come from behind.
Even just from like a store.
Oh, God.
Is that how they would?
Yeah.
Alright.
Sorry, Tom.
Basically, yeah.
that's why.
And
Surprise!
but like even from a story aspect, like that's one of those. No one's gonna like talk bad about Tolkien, but like
That's a genius.
that as in terms of like a way of telling that part of the story. Yeah, it's obviously one of the sort of like cheaper moves of this is just an easy way out sort of thing. So then you need that extra space to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because then if it does just turn off, it will just look like a cheap gimmick. Whether you're looking at the effects, whether you're looking at just the story in general, how like attached you are to it. So yeah, I mean I'm in the same boat because I've seen the extended and that, and then only heard from people like when it came to Netflix. They'll put in the theatrical version and people going, like, I'm glad it's on there, but I don't really want to watch it. Yeah. Because I want to watch the extended version.
Yeah, and to be honest, quite a lot of people that have only watched, a bit like Matt, that only watched the extended versions have said how much is taken away from the theatrical versions, and it's quite, even though they still won all of those Academy Awards and nominated for everything, and it was pushed up into the stratosphere of film, how much is missing from those versions that were nominated for those things?
Yeah, and the characters are just so iconic from how they've been portrayed and acted, and the actors are just amazing in this film. There's so many top tier actors, and the sets, obviously they all live in New Zealand, just look so real for the time that it was filmed.
The big wide shots where it takes, even when they're just walking across the terrain, they're so good to look at.
Getting the feel good music.
Yeah.
It's such a feel good film, but there's also so much tension and high stakes and drama, and you don't know whether they're gonna. Well, when you first time watch it, you like don't know whether they're gonna do it.
The 12th time, you know.
Yeah. There's just most tension in these films as compared to any film I've seen, but it's built up through all three of them being the same story, and the journey that they go on, and you feel like you're on it with them. You feel when you're watching it, you feel like you're in the movie, where you don't get that with a lot of films. I feel like anyway.
Yeah.
There's not many that do that for me, and
Yeah.
this is one of them.
I feel like the story's carried very well through each three. And I know we talked about the continuous story, but when you compare it to others, they are some of them are three separate films in their own right, and it's like, oh, okay, now it's a trilogy. But Lord of the Rings,
Yeah, or feeling like there's an original film and then it's got sequel potential, so they carry it on.
yeah,
And then it does coherently make a trilogy, but it's still very much just like you've made a sequel and then you've made another one.
yeah.
Am I right in thinking they filmed all three of these back to back? Does anyone know? I feel like I've seen that somewhere.
They did. I don't think they did that.
They didn't.
No.
Oh yeah.
Don't count me on it. That's hell of a fact if it is.
I read that somewhere. It might have been about the Hobbit, maybe.
I think
That sounds about right, 'cause I think
sounds
they
about
were
right.
quite constant.
I'm pretty confident the Hobbit would
Then
film
again,
better.
I know, like the Lord of the Rings was quite close together, wasn't it?
It was all
They
in
came out
2000s, wasn't it?
year after year, didn't they?
Yeah.
Like within 3 years.
Oh right,
Yeah.
maybe then.
So I think they were, but I.
Or it's
I-
as
I
close
don't
as
know.
it
Yeah.
as it
They were
needs
just-
to be.
I don't, yeah,
In the next video, we will find out and we will see if that fact is true. It's a hell of a fact if it is.
Hold tight, or just Google it yourself in the meantime.
That's
Well,
what
if you want to wait like 2 weeks,
Yeah.
then sit tight.
Yeah, the ones that will sit tight are the ones that know the answer, and they'll just sit back
and they'll wait.
Watch us suffer,
Yeah.
mumbling like fools. Okay.
The Return of the King holds the record for the most amount of Oscars won.
Really?
For one film. It's joint with Titanic and another film I can't remember the name of. But
Man, that's really good at that.
I've
On
not
all
seen
these
it.
awards.
Yeah, with 11, so yeah.
Cool. Yeah, but if we base it, because if I'm guessing we're sort of arguing for our trilogy in some sense that it is the best. Does that mean that that is the best just because it's won all those awards?
No, I'm just saying it's a
Okay.
point that
You trust
Okay.
critics.
I'm just throwing another fact in there.
No, I'm just
There
making
is
sure.
a point with that though, the fact that I wouldn't necessarily jump to thinking that awards or anything like that is going to instantly mean something's good.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's like arguing the difference between like so what's like your favourite song or album, but what's your favourite single? What was the what works is what's the best single that was released, because that's what's accessible to people. So I think when things are winning these awards, yeah, people moan about critics, but at the same time it's public mass appeal, and that always gets talked down. But the fact is, if you're attracting that many people and it's clicking with people, especially something like Lord of the Rings, that it's fantasy, which a lot of people aren't bothered with.
Yeah. But also those that will die on that hill of fantasy is.
I've got friends that haven't watched Lord of the Rings, and they've watched some of it and thought this is a little bit boring. But I feel like you need to, when you get into a film like this, you need to give it time and see it at least through half of the first film before you judge it, because you need because it's 3 films and because they're so long, they need the time to build up the plot really and the characters.
I've only seen the first one, and I saw it when I was like really little, and I was just like, yeah, it was cool. I was like, oh, this is all crazy going on, but yeah, I don't think I had the attention span to fully commit to the whole that length.
Yeah.
You're not going to
Do you
appreciate
know what I
it
mean?
when you're that young.
No.
Like by the end of the movie, I'll have definitely forgotten whatever's gone off in the first half, or
Yeah.
what he's even doing, what he's
I think
doing.
it applies to trilogies basically, especially these ones where most of the ones that we'd ever want to talk about are going to be at a point now where they're seen as a trilogy, whereas I think unless you catch it at that time, it's just a sweet spot where you're either growing up with them or they're your movies and you get to experience them as they're released. If you're coming to it as a newcomer, you're only ever seeing it as a trilogy. Like people looking at Lord of the Rings who haven't seen it are going to be like, it's a bit of a commitment, and it's just like,
God, yes.
But I think that's the case with a lot of trilogies. I think it's just more pronounced in this because of the weight and the length behind it.
Come on, fight for your case, fight for
Well,
your
I
cause.
haven't had any thing to fight against.
No, that's true. Yeah, we've just been agreeing so
I
far.
have come back if I need them.
Okay. Okay.
But Yeah, I think I've gone through most of what I wanted to say about it from, the first
Yeah, I mean,
read through.
yeah, I mean the cast as well. I mean, you mentioned it, but talk about iconic characters. Gandalf, Ian McKellen. I don't think there's been a better cast anywhere in any film for any character at all.
Yeah.
That man is incredible, and the performance is
and
just
again, it's showing showing actors where it's like, and that's another part about casting. It's like, yeah, you can cast someone as a character, but the character's more important. Which I think is fair enough sometimes in this case, that if they can present this character exactly how these fans are going to see this character being. But I think I almost enjoy it more. I mean, we can talk about it for something like, say, Marvel or something like that, where you get an actor actually be able to act. They'll take a character, whether it's well established, well loved, whatever, but they won't be bound by it. They'll do something else with it. I'm not saying anyone like Ian McKellen or any of the cast did that to an extreme level, but even just like the examples like changing lines or changing how things might have been said.
yeah.
That seems like a massive step, especially for something like this where it's an adaptation. Like, it's a strict adaptation of not just a comic book or a little novel. It's an adaptation of like an iconic piece of English literature that like people are gonna be really attached to. So for then giving the chance of just these actors to actually do their job and see how that changes, that shows to me like the good side of an adaptation, where it is actually an adaptation. It's not just a copy, even though Lord of the Rings does it justice. It doesn't sway too much.
Yeah, but how? Go on, Matt.
No, go on.
I was gonna say with like the cast like Ian McKellen and Andy Serkis and Frodo, what's his name, Elijah Wood, and Orlando Bloom was Legolas, and I mean you can go on and on and on, but just sort of the freedom that they're given just to add little bits or little mannerisms or little scenes, because they get to know the characters and because they are so good at what they do, they sort of, because they now become that embodiment during filming. Just little lines, how many quotes or how many scenes are included that are improvised, that are just kept in because it looked brilliant, because they are so good at their job.
I was going to say another actor who could rival Ian McKellen for the best cast is Andy Serkis as Gollum.
Yeah.
I think what he does with that character, he's sort of playing two personalities with it, and it makes for such an interesting villain type of character, because you kind of feel sorry for him in a way, but you know
his intentions.
He's not coming across. He wants to be good, but part of him's being torn apart with the side that with his other personality has been created through the ring. So I just think that you have one of the best villains in this trilogy, and you expect the villains to be Sauron, but I think the best villain in this trilogy is Gollum for what he does.
Yeah, and they've
stopped Frodo from achieving what he wants.
Yeah.
Well, that's the main aim of the trilogy, isn't it? So even though Sauron's this big villain that's obviously trying to get the ring and all these fights are breaking off and Mordor and so on, the actual story of Frodo and just him and Sam and Gollum travelling to Mount Doom to get rid of the ring, that is the main story. And the fact that Gollum's then working to try and stop that just pushes the fact that he is this main villain, the
That's always the best thing with villains
antagonist.
anyway, someone that you can, when you've almost got that sorry side from, do you know what I mean? Like, you think of all the classic
But they're
villains
still
like that.
despicable.
Yeah, exactly. They do all these despicable things, but there's still that little part of you where you're just like, alright, I get you, or you do feel sorry for him in some sort of way, or there's just something about him that you sort of connect with.
Yeah.
Like, that's
It's
what
sort
makes
of
him punch harder, doesn't it?
Tragic story, but it works so well for the film.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what it kind of comes back to, that when an original idea is adapted into a different medium, particularly if it's a book to a film, which is the most common one that people think of, that might not have been something that was needed or separated that much on reading. but translating that into film, it takes something like Sauron that could then look on film like quite a throwaway, just evil for evil's sake villain, which again it falls into just for the fact that it's like an older story, and then if it's more the follow-ons from that and the imitators of that kind of villain that has sort of concreted that trope for everyone. But on film, viewers watching that are just like, okay, this is kind of boring. But having that lens then pushing onto Gollum, like you're saying,
I think.
Go on.
I'll just say the two stories that it tells, because it does. It's the story of Aragorn and the story of Frodo as well, and it's sort of flitting between those two really helps it stay engaging for the audience watching it, because they're two very different stories that encapsulate different things, but also extremely important to progress it. So when one progresses, the other needs to, and it's sort of that how each one of them's reaching their end goal.
Yeah.
Which makes it so engaging, so interesting to flip between the two.
Yeah, and they're both completely different types of stories they're trying to tell. With
Yeah.
Aragorn, it's more, you know, your typical action film with massive set pieces, battles type thing, and trying to become the leader he needs to be the king. And Frodo is completely different side of the coin, where he's not wrapped up in any of this sort of battle situations, action, anything like that. He just wants to do it to get back home so he can live his life, basically.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've got someone relatable like that alongside someone as not perfect as Aragorn, because he has like weaknesses and faults he has to fight through the film, but someone like a guy like that, an action hero like that,
Yeah.
typical
it
sort of thing.
it brings it to a relatable level.
Yeah, they complement each other.
Yeah, very well.
And again, I think it's partly helped, and it's partly we're defending it from the aspect of it being a film, because again, you could read it completely differently. Not that it will be any less sort of impactful. They're telling a different story. It's just the fact that you need to present it a certain way if you're doing it in a film. And yeah, I think as much as they're different stories, they've still got that whole.
They're different stories,
They've
but
got that whole,
entangled.
like, you're undoubtedly a main character. You're the most important, and you need to be doing X, Y, Z, or you're the chosen one. That kind of character. But because they're on completely different paths, it doesn't make you sit at one of them too much and just go, oh, this is just like
Yeah.
too much.
Well, they are different stories, but they're very much entangled within each other, because there are events that happen and characters that are involved with both, and one event affects another, and then one event affects another. So they are separate, but they're also entangled, which is I think why it's so engaging as well. I mean, Lord of the Rings is one of the best trilogies ever. I don't think any of us can disagree with that. James, you might be able to.
Well, it sounds really good, lads.
You've not
I'll
watched
have to
it.
give it a watch sometime.
The only problem with it, the first film is quite.
I think my problem was I saw it when there was so much other stuff that I was interested in at the time, where like I'd already got that backing on it from growing up with it. Whereas this was just something completely new, so it just didn't catch me straight away. Now I'll happily sit and watch them.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that because it never caught me like that.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what it was. I was like, oh right, well I'll get to it one day, whatever.
I feel like it's a must-watch for any film fan.
Yeah.
At all.
100%.
All these like changing moments as well.
Yeah. It is a slog though.
Yeah.
It is a big commitment.
Yeah.
In a
Watching
good way,
those two. In a good way, yes, but it's also finding time to appreciate it, because even like if there's a long day at work, you come back and you think, Christ, right, I said I'd watch Lord of the Rings, I've got 4 hours now and I've just come back from a long day, or at the weekend if you're out and doing something. So it's hard to fit in. And the first film, I think, is possibly the weakest out of the three.
I disagree.
Well, like,
Really?
Yeah.
I
think it's one of the best.
I think the only reason I think it's the weakest is because as a first film, it's quite not slow, because it's supposed to be slow. It's a long story that's being told, but I'd understand why people would watch the first one and then not bother with the second two, because of how little happens of significance at times. Don't get me wrong, there are big moments in it, 100%, but at times in it, I feel needs to be quicker. It doesn't need to be 4 hours long.
I think this comes into the fact that it's it's a continuous story. It's not these separate films.
And that's my point.
So like, as much as there might be these significant moments, but all you're going to be doing is comparing it. I think again, a lot of this happens on hindsight, even the appreciation.
Yep.
These people that might be a bit hesitant to watch it if they do like it,
yeah,
the appreciation is only going to come afterwards. So it's a case of like, it's just this like battle between people. So I'd still think they're wrong if someone decides, oh no, I'm not going to bother after watching the first one.
Yeah.
But I'd still be able to go, okay, fair
Yeah.
enough. We don't want you anyway.
Stick it out.
I've shown people the film that I didn't think would like it at all, and after watching like the first half an hour, they were completely engrossed in it. So
Yeah.
I think, whilst you could say there's moments of slow
Story building.
in the first one, it's still engaging and still interesting for people who haven't seen it before. I think.
Agree.
As long as you're like a film fan. If you're not a film fan and you're
Yeah.
not like a person who appreciates certain things about films and like nerdy type film, because it is a nerdy type film.
Yeah.
But it is one of the best films I think of all time, because there's not many weaknesses I can think of for this type of film.
Yeah.
Other than it's long and it's a commitment.
Yeah.
I don't think that holds it back for me.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's terrible. I love Lord of the Rings. It's one of the favourite trilogies, favourite films I've ever seen. It's just I can understand why people would watch the first one. I think, oh Christ, okay, this is quite hard to get through, or I'm not going to watch it. Hell of a start, to be fair. Lord of the Rings, great trilogy. James, to be fair, you can probably guess what James.
I'm just like, three guesses.
With the amount of things that's in front of him. James, what trilogy are you bringing to the table for us to discuss?
The original Star Wars trilogy.
The original Star Wars trilogy.
So I'm talking New Hope, Empire, Return of the Jedi.
Nice.
Just for you lot out there that don't know what I'm talking about. Because some of you won't.
No.
I don't know. One of the first movies I can remember sitting and watching. The first thing is seeing the Hoth scene in Episode 5.
Yeah.
That's one of my first memories of Star Wars, and I don't know why. I just loved all the snow thing and everything that was going on in that. I was like, this is amazing. It's Star Wars. It's just Star Wars, isn't it? You know what I mean?
I feel like with Star Wars and what you've just said, it was quite easy to watch Star Wars and think, right, this is exciting straight away.
So much
because
going
it was
on.
so out there and so different. You watched it and went, wow, why on earth is this big four-legged mechanical thing being wrapped around with rope, and why are they running off? Why are these little creatures there, and what's that, and what's this? There's so many questions that it brought to the table answering.
The scale of it all, and the fact it did, especially that original one, it does feel like a whole galaxy's worth of stuff is going on, but they're touching all these different places. So for instance, let's just go with Episode 5 because it's the best one. You're starting off in Hoth, then you got Dagobah, Bespin. It's literally covering these completely different environments, but it does enough in each. It doesn't feel like they're just going, oh, there's just little things.
It's not a gimmick at that.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the introduction to each planet and each thing.
Everything's got its part to do.
Exactly.
Everything just works.
It's purposeful, which is what it needs to be.
And I think the films are like that themselves as well. Like you were saying, Matt, about that Lord of the Rings with it being coherent. Obviously, those 3 Star Wars films are in sort of chronological order and everything they're supposed to be. But as well, you've got that sort of there's a couple of years gap between each one in the time. So they are separate enough in their own right. They've got their own little sub sort of plots, let's say, for each movie that make them stand out on their own, for me anyway, at least.
And I think in that case, that's actually a strength in this case, whereas if they did something like that with a straight adaptation like Lord of the Rings, it'd have fell fairly flat.
Yeah, agreed.
Whereas ones like this, it is like a movie where you've got an original idea, and then okay, we can push this a bit further. Let's do another story. Let's do another story. And it's only ever seemed to be like a strength as it goes along.
Yeah, it's like with Episode 4. It gives you introduces a few characters, not that many really when you think about it. And then you've got the whole. Basically, the main story is we've got to go rescue the princess. And then as they're going along, that's when the whole they realise the force of the Empire and everything bleeds into it, and they all get pulled into that. Then, not they don't want to be, they've just got their one mission to go on, but they get pulled into it. So then it doesn't really. It gives you just enough where it's like if that was just the film on its own, there's still a resolution at the end of it where you think, oh yeah, they've won or whatever, or they've done something good. Because I mean, the main villain Tarkin, he's dead by the end, isn't he?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not actually Vader the main villain.
Yeah.
I think people miss that a lot. So yeah, it does just enough, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so it's like if they'd have left it there, that's fine. But then episode 5 comes in. It's set a couple of years later, so a lot more sort of. Well, even and that's the cool thing actually. Before I get into it, they don't. It doesn't feel like you need that information in between two movies. It's like it's already set up. It sort of drops you in that scene with Hoth, but from what you've already got from that looming bit as the first film goes on of them all being dragged into the fight with the Empire.
Yeah.
You're thrown into it straight away, and you can see straight away that the stakes have already got higher just in those couple of years.
Yeah.
You get a little title sequence as well to technically.
I was just
that's
about
the
to
point,
say,
actually,
Star Wars. I mean,
It's just set
one
up
of the
for you, yeah.
the best part about, or it's not the best part. One of the best things about it is the fact they introduced this title sequence at the start, which gave you the context in order to sit the film and understand what's going on. Because it did start in the middle of something at some point.
Yeah.
So, but this piece of context, we don't question it. We don't sit there and
Well, it's
go,
like when we said.
"Oh God, why is this happening?" We sat there going, "All right, okay, let's enjoy what's about to happen."
It's like when we said with like Marvel films and that, it's so tiring watching origin stories over and over again, isn't it? So with that, I love the fact that they just drop you into these things. It's literally what 3-4 paragraphs.
3 paragraphs of dialogue. That's it.
And it's just like, right, here you go,
Dialogue, bro.
get on with it.
Yeah.
And then
And I
you
really
get a
respect
battle
that.
sequence or whatever.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what's so enjoyable. It starts off like fast paced or something, and
Something
Whatever it
it's
is, something's happening,
Yeah.
and then takes away from the fact that could have just felt like you've just got stuff just vomited in front of you, and you have to deal with all this stuff that you've not actually been able to watch. You've just been reading, which people obviously haven't gone to the cinema to do. So it's like, I know it's not just Star Wars, but Star Wars have that sort of iconic attachment to it. But the fact then that your next opening scene, you're just going to fall straight into it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to then have any of that extra weight, that extra questioning with something that is dipping you into this fantasy story of just going, because that can be daunting for people.
100%. Just go back on the point of episode 4.
Yeah.
The story of that was so well structured and
Yeah.
well built. They copied the exact same story for The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And
Which
look how successful that film was. And obviously there was a lot of hype surrounding it, 100%, but also because the storyline of it was so good and the way it was built up and how it covered all these different things, because it followed the same
Because
structure.
they needed that hook to get people back
Exactly
in, didn't
that.
they? And it did exactly what it needed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to come back to that, to be fair, because you'd said about how, as a series, it, especially with it being this story covering a galaxy, which again really is just a scaled up version of any setting. It's just the fact that that's the way they're dealing with. But I think, especially looking at say episode 4, episode 5. Episode 4 being the original story, that's the one I actually pull out with the whole idea of it feeling like a wider galaxy, this massive, expansive setting, without showing you it.
Yeah.
And then episode 5 obviously is like, okay, people are in on this. We are gonna push that a bit more because we can, and that's fine because you've already had that groundwork done. But then also that's what's then missing in attempts like, namely the sequel trilogy, in the fact that you've got a lot being shown. The fact how, it's not going to spoil anything because no one really cares, but you've got like a sky full of spaceships.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel that massive, it doesn't feel that big.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got
Absolutely.
a cantina scene in episode 4, and you're just like, they don't have to go anywhere, they literally haven't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, this is like such a wide world that we're in now, and we're stuck in. But then that also sort of like shows again with the treatment of a trilogy is the fact that it was never seen as this consistent story, even though they obviously were following a story that was going to grow and become something else. Whereas again, something like the sequel trilogy or any attempts that have been done similar tend to go, oh no, we're making one continuous thing, and it's going to be very adamant that we're making this continuous thing that's got to feel somewhat attached to each other. So yeah, I do think the separation is a strength in Star Wars, and with some of the other trilogies it's connected to.
Yeah.
Having that separation actually holds it together a bit more.
Sorry, can you read out your line
About
for episode 5?
Well, basically, if we summarise it down,
I'm excited.
you've got
Just read it
episode
word for word.
Hang on, I'll just go through it. So, like we said, episode 4 introduces everything, gives you just enough, but not too much. Episode 5, shit hits the fan, and it's got a fuck you ending. It's one of the first films I can think of watching where it ends and the bad guys have won, basically, or are winning. They're ahead of all the heroes and that.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Is a great middle.
It is perfect, isn't it?
You can't argue.
And yeah, I mean, then episode 6 sort of does wrap everything up.
Yeah.
There's probably not as much mad stuff going on, is there? Really?
I've noticed that, like the last time, I think last time I watched it,
Yeah.
we were watching it, and I was saying how that sort of fit that thinking in my head of the whole. You've got an original story, and then you've got a sequel, and then okay, we'll do another sequel, and that's what it seemed to feel like. Episode 6 felt like such a sequel movie. It felt, especially with how that starts, and you've got again this sort of bit of a time jump feel to it, where you don't know where these people are going to be. You know vaguely where they ended up in the last one, but you're just picking up on all these threads now, and let's just have this story, but also let's tie up this general thing that was beginning.
I mean, that's what I like about that one. It wraps everything up just nicely, answers all the questions that it needs to, but then leaves it relatively open-ended so that they could do anything else that they wanted to with it.
Yeah.
But again, just like like episode 4, if they did just leave it at those 3 films, it was a perfect ending to finish all that off.
Yeah, they can just book it.
So yeah, I was going to say something else then now, but I've just started off on that and it's completely watched me.
Right. I mean, that brings us to the end of part 1. I know I said we talk about mine, but just to make sure we're sort of on an even playing field with that sort of time schedule, we'll bring part 1 to a close there. I mean, 2 very, very fantastic trilogies. Lord of the Rings, amazing. The original Star Wars is just iconic and brilliant. So yeah, that brings us to the end of part 1. Part 2 we will pick up with mine and Tom's mystery trilogy that he's going to bring to the table, so you don't know what that is going to be at all, and then we'll talk about a few statistics and so on. So yeah, thank you for watching part 1. Part 2 is on the way, and we'll see you in the next video. See you in a minute. Welcome to Therapy with Ben.
How are you feeling today, darling?
Not good.